Well, ask me anything, I said. I'm going to ask our lovely usher, Jennifer, if you have a card where you wrote a question, just pass it to the inside of your aisle, and she will come get them from you. And while she does that, I am going to answer a couple that I got over email. So the idea behind Ask Me Anything is, who the heck is your minister? Should you be able to stump them and ask them questions? And if you're about to turn in a question that says, like, what year was the Cambridge platform signed? That one I happen to know, but if I can Google it, I'm just going to Google it. But that also means you could Google it. Thank you. Oh, 1-1. Thank you. All right, so the first question that I'm going to answer was, this came from someone who did not sign it, and I cannot tell what their email address did not inform me who they are. But it's a random email that asked me a question, so I assumed it must be for this service. Because the question is, what does the One Ring mean to you, and what does it represent? Also related to that, what does the character Gollum represent? And this is probably because I said on my invitation that I am a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. And I am a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. Books, movies, everything, indexes, appendices, it's all. I'm insane. It's not right. But, I mean, one of the things I love about Tolkien, one of the reasons that I love, like, you guys know I love superhero stories and adventure, is because there's good and there's evil. Like, there's no doubt about who is who. I mean, there's a few, like, sneaky characters, but generally speaking, if you're talking about the One Ring, it is the pure desire to control. That is evil. There you go. It represents evil to me. And then Gollum represents the possibility of redemption for even the most lowly of sniveling and crawling creatures, which is sometimes us. So that's a short answer. I'm really into the hobbits, though. If you want to ask me anything about their lives or how they give each other presents on their birthdays, I would be happy to talk about that. So that's the first question. I have a question. Oh, that's that one. We'll do that one later. I had an interesting question. It's more of an advice question. And I'm going to just present it to you, the situation sort of sanitized for the protection of all involved, although it's not something about people here at the church, but just, for privacy's sake. The question is, there was an online Zoom meeting of, it was the board and some workers of a nonprofit, and they have a system set up where the meetings are recorded. So they had their meeting, and then people kind of went their ways, and a few folks were sitting in the room together. And during the meeting, an employee who was not there was misgendered. Somebody referred to them as she, for instance, and then somebody else in the meeting said, oh, no, they've started transitioning, it's he now. And the president said, oh, I did not know that. And the meeting went on. And that's fine. And then the meeting ended and everybody went their way, and then a couple of folks were just sitting there and they were just talking. These were all cisgender people, and they were expressing the difficulty that, sometimes it's hard to remember pronouns and how difficult it is, especially when it's they, them, because especially if you were born before, like, say, 1970, it was beaten into your head that they is plural. And so it's hard to let go of that and go, oh, but even further back, it's always been non-gendered singular. But we took that out. So they were expressing this, and it was kind of like, it turned out, a bit of a butt dial because someone else was still on the call and heard all this and felt uncomfortable about it. And so they reached out to another board member and shared the recording and their feelings. And a lovely email went out to everyone in the organization about pronoun use. It was just great email, really kind and welcoming, and just like let's live up to our good standards, right? So then there's two questions that come up. One is, how do you handle that in a workplace like how do you ensure that it is a safe and welcoming workplace for your trans people? There's a question also of like, the folks who were having this conversation were not malicious. They felt a little bit like somebody ambushed them, right? Okay, so these are all reasonable responses and understanding things. And I was lucky that when I got this question, like not a day later, my very best friend, Reverend Milo Grant, who happens to be a trans person, came to visit. And I said, hey, what do you think? I'm going to give you the general version. And they gave me some great information. One is that, one thing they said is, it's fine for people to like be frustrated with pronoun like the issue of trying to learn new pronouns. It's difficult. We all want to gripe about it sometimes, perhaps, if we're not trans. And so that's fine. The problem is they were doing it in a place of work. They were doing it in a boardroom. They were doing it using the workplace technology to record it. And that's not the place to do it. There's a reason we call that water cooler talk. You say it at the water cooler so you don't say it near your boss or near your other employees because it's not appropriate for the workplace. And I'm not saying those people were bad people for having that conversation. I've certainly been sympathetic and had my own, I still do have my own struggles with pronouns. The question is, where is it appropriate? And here's the thing. It's appropriate somewhere else. Because this is actually a workplace. And perhaps if the person who was transitioning had been on that call, this would feel like a hostile workplace. This would feel like a place where they felt like maybe they were more trouble than they were worth. Because it seems if it's you, it's pretty darn easy to use the right name and pronouns. And it seems if it's not you, it's hard. But if we're committed to creating a space that is welcoming to all folks, then basically it was handled correctly. The general email sent out to just remind everyone, and that's something we should all be doing all the time, just reminding each other gently, hey, remember that? We're going to step up and have good standards for this. And then, unfortunately, I would say to the folks on the board who felt a little ambushed, it's okay to get with your friends and say, this is difficult. I am struggling with this. But get out of a workplace. Go do it privately, the same way that we go bitch and moan about other stuff in our lives, excuse my language. You don't want to hurt the person. So that was, I thought, a pretty good question that I'm really glad somebody brought up. So thank you. That was a good one. All right. Now, let's see some of these. Have I moved lately to a new place? I have not moved lately to a new place. I have a very nice little house in Waco, and my 20-year-old son and his lovely girlfriend live in the tiny garage apartment behind the house, and they are my saviors, so that when I come here for 3 or 4 or 5 days, they will take care of everybody, all the pets and the critters and the plants. So I am still there. And yes, one of my children still lives with me, and the other one lives in Denton and is working for UNT. What? Man, I love you guys. What are some of the committees that are understaffed at the church? Well, somebody is setting me up for some success here. No. I will say that there are always things to be done in the church. We desperately, not desperately, but definitely want folks to get involved in religious education, for instance. If you're not a parent, that doesn't mean you can't come and help teach a class once in a while. You know, once a month, show up and be the assistant. You get to hang out with young people. They remind you that life is still good. And if you want, you can also hang out with babies. We got a nursery. There's going to be youth stuff coming up. I mean, plenty of places to help. So that's one. Dick, do you want to say anything about facilities? Next time Dick calls for a work day, everybody just show up. That's what we need. If you happen to have facilities like skills, get with that guy right there. Raise your hand. Because he will put you to work, or he will ask you what you can do and ask about your expertise. So that will be good. What other committees are understaffed? We're just looking for leadership in general. If you're a person who's been here and you're ready to step forward and, help with a project, I'm sure that Nancy and Ona would not mind some help with postcards. I know that Linda Frank here does our social action, which is our share the plate, and could probably use some assistance with that. And so basically, tell us what you are interested in, and we will tell you where you might find a place that really fits you. Thank you for that very good question. Oh boy, let's see. I need glasses for this one. It's just very light writing. I've been reading about incels this morning. What responsibility do we have towards treating these men with compassion? So if you don't know, incel is a slang term that stands for involuntary celibate. These are very toxic men on the internet, particularly, is where they have rallied and thrive, who declare that it is not their fault they're celibate, it's all the evil women in the world. Perhaps, I'm not joking, it's terrible, it's really stupid. There was a shooting in California a few years ago where a young man went onto a college campus and shot several women. He was an incel. They are toxic. They proudly cry that rape is fine and a great idea. It is a really sick, sick movement. The question I would ask you is, do you know what your kids are doing online? Especially if you've got kids who are teenagers or college age. Because if you go into a space where you are surrounded by people who believe something really strongly, your brain wants to believe it. And if you've been frustrated, let's say you're a young man who just is like all young men and frankly young women too, and our bodies are telling us it's time to get busy doing some stuff, And you go around other men who say, well, I can't find a girlfriend either, and let's just all take what we want. So I see how it happens. But one of the things I found with a lot of the folks I know who are my age, have kids my age, 20s and late teens, their kids are being radicalized online, and they don't know about it until they start coming to the dinner table and saying horrific things, or sometimes they just don't know at all. So I just say, talk to the people in your life that you think might be at risk of being in these groups. They are almost all white, cisgender, young men. I believe we do have a responsibility to show compassion towards them. And I also believe that we can show compassion towards people while also holding them accountable for behaviors. So part of compassion is showing people that they are not allowed to live in a way that hurts others. So yeah, I think we should be compassionate, and I think we should definitely hold them to account. So that's my thoughts. Again, if these don't, freedom of the pulpit, you might totally disagree with me. That's okay. I'll save that one for last stick. All right. Let's see. You guys are awesome. Thank you for doing this with me. It's fun. I should ask you all these questions. Okay, if for some fantastical reason I could no longer be a Unitarian Universalist, what faith would I choose? I would actually either choose nothing, because that's fine, or I would become a Reformed Jew. I love Reformed Jewish people. I love their commitment to the work of improving the world, that, everything you do is to heal the world. Tikkun olam, that's our job, is to heal the world. I also love the idea that the ways that we talk to each other are a mitzvah, a blessing, that every little thing we do can be a blessing. And frankly, I've just known a lot of really cool rabbis who made me want to learn and learn and learn and learn, and I've always wanted to learn Hebrew, so why not? That's kind of my So there you go. When were the UU principles created? That is a good question. It is kind of Googleable, and I'm not going to give you a really exact answer. There are years and stuff of all the meetings and such. The way that they came to be was a movement that started in the 70s. As you know, Unitarianism, or as you maybe don't know, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America merged in 1961 and became the Unitarian Universalist Association, the longest and most unwieldy name in the whole world. And so when that happened, it was, I want to say it was like 82 or 83 when the first set of 7 principles was agreed upon by the representatives at our General Assembly, which is where the business of the church happens. It's our big once-a-year annual congregations gathering, and each congregation sends folks who are delegates who can vote on the business. And it was that group. They have study groups, they have work groups. I know that it was a years-long process. Every single principle was wordsmithed, looked at, taken out to the public, brought back, fixed, changed, taken out to the public until they were finally voted upon. And you may get to see this whole process in practice because it seems very likely that the UUA will be voting on whether to adopt an 8th principle about standing up to oppression and injustice, specifically around race and sexuality. So, those are coming. So you may get to see it all. And if you go to GA in the next few years, you could be part of voting on it. You could be part of writing it. It's all volunteers, guys. It's just, we do the work. All right. I hope that that helps with that question. Then why do we have the UU principles? Why do we have Question Sunday? And I'll get to the last one in a second. So the UU principles were created because although we do not have a creed, we agree that we have values that we share. And the principles are simply a way of expressing those values, that we can affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that we believe in and support the interdependent web of all existence that we're part of. I mean, those are just 2 of the 7. But honestly, my suspicion is that they were created because when other people ask you what religion you are, it's nice to be able to say, look at these principles, this is what we believe. And that's all it is. This is not a creed. This is not a dogma. This can be changed. This can be adapted. This can be updated. They have at various times. We actually did just change. One of our sources said the words of men and women, and we changed it to people. You know, little things. We're not... I also know at least one Unitarian minister who despises the UU principles and says that they are the 7 inanities. I disagree strongly. But he's a UU minister, and that's his opinion, and he can preach it. So there you go. All right. Question Sunday, again, is kind of a way to make me accessible to you guys. You can ask me questions about religion, or you can ask me questions about me. It's so that it's for that. It's to build this relationship. And it's a little bit fun. And then from the RE children, where are decisions made in UU churches? Is that right? That's a great question. We are committed to the democratic principles and processes, and so that's actually one of our principles. Decisions are made, first of all, they are made here. The congregation is at the top of our organizational chart. You are the bosses. The next place, the thing that you do is you go, oh, we need some representatives to, do the business of the church. We're going to elect some people to be our board of trustees, right? So then we have a board, president, secretary, all that good stuff. And those are places where decisions are made. Like, well, we've got to get a new air conditioner. Should we get this one or this one? The facilities team recommends this one. We're going to vote on it and say, yay, we're done, right? Decisions are made. But it's all kinds of decisions too. It's the decision of like, oh, do we wear our masks or not anymore? Or do we put tops on our drinks? So then after that, there's other groups like committees and teams. So in RE, religious education, There's Thomas, who is our director of lifespan religious education, and Thomas is a person who makes decisions, but they don't make decisions in a vacuum. They have input from the other parents in the program and from other RE volunteers, and there's an RE group, a team that meets. So you can be part of it that way and help make the decisions. We welcome younger people on our committees. So I would love to have some youth on any of our groups. And I think that if you can possibly do it, having your meetings be open to as many folks who want to show up and contribute, that's the way to go. So that, I think, is kind of how decisions get made, or where they get made. All right, almost done. We're down to the last couple. So, let me make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. This question is a hard one. What is your biggest unanswered question? I need a list and a marker and like 4 or 5 days. What is your biggest unanswered question? Raise your hand, call it out. Is there a God? That's a big question. What other questions? Big questions. Come on. What's your biggest question?
Does anything matter?
Does anything? Oh, that's a core question. What happened? Will Democrats ever come back into power? Or this year? This year. That one is unanswered just because it's a future thing. Where do we go when we die? Yeah, I mean, these are big questions. That's one of my unanswered questions. I don't feel a lot of stress over it. I don't believe in hell, so I'm not really worried about it. Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the meaning question. Does anything matter? Do I believe in the Rainbow Bridge? Okay, these are all good questions. All right, first I'm going to talk about what matters. Nothing. Everything. Yeah, you are correct. We make meaning. Some of us find it in God. That's a way that people make meaning. Sometimes it's a God that doesn't look like a God I would worship, but that's a way that people make meaning. And we make meaning from our experience and our relationships. And so we have to decide what matters. It's up to you. There are people I know I've been one of these people who in the depths of depression and grief, nothing matters. Because right then your body is hurting, your mind is hurting so bad that the only thing that matters is that you can just keep going. Or sometimes you can't. And you have to make the decision. Do I matter? Do I have something to give? Is there some way someone could help me? All of those questions come down to like whether you think you matter in the world. And you can be very humble in your mattering. You can recognize that you're part of the interdependent web. One of my favorite things is to go out and look up at the stars and be made to feel small. Yeah, done.
I think on the does anything matter, it depends on what situation.
Everything, right. It's contextual, again.
Hungry, there's stuff that really matters.
Absolutely. That's like in the depths of grief, nothing matters.
We're sitting here and we're well fed, housed, whatever, so we can play with the concept.
That's right. Don brings up a good thing, a good point, which is the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's, on the bottom, food, water, shelter, love, air, we should add. And it goes up from there until you've got that stuff, that matters to your body, to your survival. Until you get that straightened out, it's harder to go up. Thank you. That's context. I don't know. We could have a whole coffee and talk about it, and we should. As far as the Rainbow Bridge is the idea that whatever, we don't know what happens to people after they die, but pets are so wonderful that when they die, they go to heaven on the Rainbow Bridge. Here's what I will say. I don't know, but yes. Yes, if there is justice in the cosmos, any animal that loves people as unconditionally as a dog should go to heaven on a rainbow bridge. Okay. So, or cats even, or snakes or alligators, whatever your pet is. Of course, your alligator will waddle to heaven on the rainbow bridge. So, all right, I think that's the unanswered questions. As far as what happens after you die, I do not know. I'll be interested to hear. So, I have two last questions. One is, what are you going to do, Kris, when you tragically go off to Washington, D.C. next year? What are your career plans? My first career plan is to do my chaplaincy internship, where I will either for 10 weeks intensive in the summer or over the course of a semester work at a hospital or in another medical facility as a chaplain. An interdenominational chaplain is part of the credentialing process for UU ministers that I have put off for years and years and years because it's hard to do when you work full time. So this is my chance. So I'm going to get that done, and then we shall see. I will say that there are 4 churches in the area that my husband lives that are looking for ministers. So that's actually very encouraging. So that's my big plan. And the last one is, Dick, would you sing a few bars of a Janis Joplin song? I'll just sing one that we know she can do a cappella. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? My friends all have Porsches. I must make amends. I worked hard all my lifetime, no help from my friends. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? I think that's a great way to stop. Do not buy me a Mercedes-Benz. But thank you for your wonderful, thoughtful, and thought-provoking questions. And I look forward to talking with all of you more about them.